Welcome to the newly branded Jane Healey Happy Hour, formerly Historical Happy Hour, the podcast that explores new and exciting novels of all genres. I'm your host, best-selling historical fiction author Jane Healey, and in today's episode, we welcome Kayla Hardy to discuss her fantastic debut, The Quarter Queen, which is receiving rave reviews and has been called a vibrant and dazzling historical fantasy that brings New Orleans to magical, menacing life through the eyes of a mother and daughter who must fight to survive. It comes out March 31st. Welcome, Kayla. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me, Jane.
Yeah, this is awesome. So I have so many questions. I'm going to read your bio real quick so everyone learns a little more about you, and then we'll dive in. So Kayla Hardy is a mythology expert and a multi-hyphenate author and screenwriter of Louisiana Creole descent. She earned her PhD in creative writing and African American literature from SUNY Binghamton University. Dr. Hardy is an adjunct professor at SUNY and is an accomplished scholar of Black folklore, mythology, and voodoo. The Quarter Queen is her first novel. Again, welcome.
Thank you.
So I have so many questions. Again, congratulations on your debut. My publicist, Anne-Marie, helps me with bookings, and we were talking about this book this morning because we're like, this is such a unique, cool premise, and New Orleans culture and history is so fascinating and rich and troubling and lush. And so talk about the premise of the novel and what inspired you to write it.
Thank you so much. I love how you said troubling too, because it is for all, and I think, and I'm getting ahead of myself, for all of the sort of lushness and grandeur of New Orleans, there's the rot beneath when we talk about the 19th century and the enslavement of Black folks, that you can't do the 19th century without talking about slavery. And I think I was so excited to do in a genre context of like a historical fantasy, because I feel like sometimes the metaphor allows you to really get to the heart of things. So all that to be said, was super inspired because I am of Louisiana Creole descent. No one is perhaps more famous in that demographic besides the queen herself, Marie Laveau. And I think I really wanted to dive into this because I was a folklore researcher. I've been so inspired by I think this gets into other things too, but like Zora Neale Hurston, who really went through the American South and kind of studied a lot of Black folklore. And then she spent 3 days being naked and summoning Marie Laveau in a ritual. And I'm like, I'm not doing that, but we can, you know what I mean? But we can, in a fictional context, tackle this. And I think I was almost in a way intimidated because I just grew up hearing so much about her. And I think, later being a researcher, I was looking to do a textbook on the voodoo Loa. And the more I was researching Marie Laveau, I'm like, this will make such a great story. And at that time, I was, branching off of screenwriting. So this became a television pilot that went around and started winning awards. I started meeting with managers, and they were like, this would be very expensive to make. And I was like, but not if we do the IP as a book. But long story short, I was a novelist first. I went to school for that and later became a screenwriter. And now it's kind of back full circle to being a novelist, and very insane. But needless to say, the book sold pretty quickly. We were very excited about Valentine, and really my editor had a great vision for it, had to really center more forward as the daughter. But all that to be said is that a lot of people get confused between Marie Laveau 1 and Marie Laveau 2. And Marie Laveau 2, if you don't know, a few facts about her, she was said pretty much to be more wicked than her mother. And I'm like, that's great, because wicked to who? And I really felt like we could really do a double kind of metaphor with that. Mm-hmm. And really, New Orleans being a sort of super Catholic city, I felt like that motif of the saints and the sinners, and they each kind of embody that. Marie is, kind of the saint, Marie's a sinner, and in a way, it's a metaphor for all of us. I think we all have a little bit of a saint and a sinner in us. A super long-winded answer.
No, I love the answer. You actually answered my second question, because I was like, I love hearing people's different paths to publication. Mm-hmm. And I was reading on your website that this was conceived as a television pilot.
Yes.
And so, but you found your way to publish a novel. So that's so cool.
Absolutely.
So this story is set in 1840s New Orleans and inspired by, as you mentioned, real person in history, Marie Laveau. And in your note, I love author's notes. I'm such a nerd about that stuff. So in your author's note, you say the real life Marie Laveau was in fact a long reigning voodoo queen in New Orleans. Much of what we know about her life remains vague, veiled, if you will. I like to imagine that's exactly the way a woman like Marie intended. So talk about what you know and where you had to fill in the blanks in terms of her life.
Oh my goodness. So, and I think a lot of people will forgive me for this. We really center Marie 1 and 2. She had other children, other daughters. It just, we can't have like six Maries running around in a book. Like what? And so there's a lot. And I love this question because voodoo itself is very much, and I hope people who practice voodoo forgive me for this. A lot of it is mysterious, even to me who has studied it for many years. And honestly, probably a bit of a closed practice. I don't think one can just, top right in. You probably shouldn't if you're listening to this. You want to go practice voodoo, go talk to people who actually do this. Please do not practice this at home willy-nilly. Please don't do that because I am Creole. I do believe in juju and we don't want to be, you just trust me, please don't. But Marie was a lot of things. She was, and I really, really loved, I'm inspired by stories like Game of Thrones, The Witcher, that get into morally gray worlds. And I always thought, and maybe I'm a bit of a cynic too, that's how I kind of see the world. In that, I think gray stories allow you to really get to like the light because there's always a lot of darkness, but like it is so hard to maybe be a good person when all these things are very fraught and dangerous around because we're scared oftentimes. And I think we all like to imagine we'd be the hero. But what if you're a mother? And what if you have all these things that selfishly you want to protect? It kind of would make you the villain to somebody. And that's how I really wanted to approach Marie and her story. And so she was a plague nurse. She, went and visited prisoners in prison to help them through pain, last rites. She was, worked very close with Pierre Antoine, the famous priest that was there, and more on him later because he's very fascinating. Especially for a story like this, like you cannot make this up because it's like he is so great. And for folks who don't know, he came as pretty much an emissary for the Spanish crown for an Inquisition. That never happened. And so, in many ways, the Court of Queen has an Inquisition in the past, which makes it in all history automatically. And I'm jumping ahead, but
that's okay.
Marie was kind of all those things: a plague nurse, a voodoo queen, a mother, a wife, a widow, and maybe a bit of a villain to some people. And I honestly, I'm like, that's a great character. And I think, the impetus to approach Marie for a lot of folks has been like, let's focus on the spectacle and the magic. And even if you go to New Orleans, lots of tourists, God bless them, will focus on that. And I'm like, she was the first in her family to be born free. And I'm like, that, if we were in the 19th century, I could not get that off of my mind. I bet she couldn't get off hers either. And so I often wondered, how did that, because I feel like that's often left out of discussions. How did that affect her as a voodoo queen? Because then she was a free woman, but a lot of folks, your friends, your, acquaintances might also be enslaved. But so New Orleans, they did allow enslaved people to practice voodoo in the Congo Square on Sundays and whatnot. And so she was kind of the queen of everybody under that one kind of parcel of power. And I thought that's a very, very intriguing kind of duality to her. And I honestly thought that approaching her as a mother would really humanize her. Because again, we'll get to the spectacle and fantasy, but we stay for the characters. And I think her as a mother who would do anything to save her daughter from this sort of, pretty much from slavery itself. Because remember, Black people could be free. If someone actually present those freedom papers, they could be torn up, disappeared, anything. So it's a very contentious aspect of freedom. Now, New Orleans enjoyed quite a good deal of that, given that, free people of color could own houses and whatnot. A lot more freedoms, I would suspect, in New Orleans versus some other southern states, which the Court of Queen gets into. But yeah, and so I was really excited to approach it from that aspect. Again, another long-winded answer, but I could nerd out about her all day. But yes, kind of as a bit of an anti-hero.
Amazing. No, I love your long-winded answers. Yeah. This is the best kind of interviews because you make my job easier.
I love to, yeah.
I don't have to pull it out of you at all. Okay, so you or your publicist provided some terrific questions. So thank you. I love it when guests do that. So you ground the book in voodoo and Black Southern folklore, areas you've studied academically for years. So how did your scholarly research shape the magic system and spirituality in the novel?
Okay. Love this question. I think that might have been Chelsea's question. I think I gave two. Shout out to Chelsea, my girl. So, I want to be respectful again because I don't practice voodoo, and I want to, I feel like my duty again as a person that is also a Black woman, that is also a researcher. I really, really wanted to make voodoo show it in a light that I think Hollywood is pretty much skewed and made it seem like this dark, satanic, and it's like Satan has nothing to do with voodoo. In fact, which I think one thing I was very proud of in the novel is like really gets to the heart of like Marie is a Catholic, very devout, probably the most devout in New Orleans, one could argue, and is also the voodoo queen. And voodoo itself is a syncretic religion that has, basically has roots in Catholicism, and the Loa are basically intermediaries that are here to help their followers. Are they a bit of tricksters? Yes, because what God probably isn't. But this because they want you to figure it out on your own. But in the meantime, because it's a fantasy novel, a bit of the puppeteers behind it all. But I would say I wanted to reflect the positivity in that, and that it was an empowering tool, especially for free and enslaved Black folks. But also because it's a fantasy novel, we can show them, we can tease them out. And I think for me, New Orleans pretty much the great part about it. I don't know if you've ever been. It's pretty much the way it's represented in the Quarter Queen. It's full of spirits and demons and whatnot. Even if people don't believe in it, people are always talking about it. They're everywhere. The mask, it's a Mardi Gras every day for me when I'm there because I love to drink and love to party, get my re on. But at the same time, my mom was like, girl. But at the same time, I think in a fantasy novel, you can do a bit more. And I got to really kind of explore the idea of like in voodoo, it's called being mounted when the Loa will embody you and dwell within you, possess you, other terms, I guess, is possession. And through that, you have a spiritual experience. And, a lot of like, we have a deeply Catholic family, not really much different than people saying, come dwell within me, Holy Ghost. So again, we get to see the roots between kind of both religions. So I would say I really just wanted to show in a respectful light, but also having some fun. And so like Papa Legba, for instance, um, you know, because he's a character, again, I'm an author, hopefully it's respectful. But again, there's the moniker, like he who stands at the beginning and the end. That's my invention, but it's based on real facts. Papa Legba is the first Loa that will be invoked in a ritual before the others. He's the communicator Loa, the gateway Loa, the one that translates all languages. And I think he's a really fun character because he's always like kind of an old man that's really a trickster. And I thought, well, that's my invention. But at the same time, I think because Quarter Queen's adult history, we have our own little in-universe spins on it. It's still voodoo. And so stuff like that, I had a lot of fun with.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you mentioned New Orleans. I've been there. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dying to go there with my daughters because
Mm-hmm.
it's like nowhere else on earth, right? And
Nowhere.
you're right about the feelings in the air and the spirituality and the
Yes.
culture and the food. Don't get me started on
Yes.
the
Woo.
food. Such good food. So talk about, I mean, I love when settings are almost like characters unto
Yes.
themselves. So how did you, I mean, obviously you have a family connection there, personal connection. How did you create New Orleans as a setting in the 1800s, and what was your research process like? Maybe you didn't have to do that much because you have a connection there already, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious about that.
I think it's informed twofold from my parents are separated or were, and I spent a lot of my summers in the South with my dad's side, and they're from Lafayette, Monroe, and we would go visit New Orleans. I have a few cousins in New Orleans as well, and that was always the anchor city, and then also Shreveport. And so I got to be bounced around between there and Baton Rouge as well, and really got to experience the magic of Louisiana as a whole. And I'm so, it's mind blowing because I pretty much was a Northerner, and it was like a culture shock almost to the point to where when I would go back home, my accent had changed. And like people were like, what happened to your voice? It's like, baby. It's like it's so cute. The way they talk, it's so cute. But at the same time, you know, going and becoming a researcher, you start diving more into the 19th century and the politics and whatnot. And then because I'm a nerd, I'll go look at maps. And so that was probably a challenging part too, was the map for the Quarter Queen, because we have one, which maybe I can show because I have the final copy here. Sneak peek. We have the map, which is, my map is yes,
Cool.
yes.
Yeah.
But I'm not a map person. And so, maybe you've gone through this with the book, like have to turn in the map for like the map maker. And then it's like, okay, but I have to give them a good sample. And so just looking at the maps were very helpful for placing locations. Because I remember when this book was acquired, my editor, Natalie, God bless her, was like, Kayla, you need to just go make a map so we can figure out, you know what I mean? Because
Right.
once you have those locations visually, you're tuned in, then they're set pieces. Then you realize that you check off all those boxes. So I really wanted to feel like we were all over the quarter, but we never really leave the quarter. So again, we go to the bayou. But at the same time, there was some invention on my part. And this is a little bit of my gripe sometimes with historical fiction, is that we can get the texture of a room, of a place, but there's not like, and sometimes in some novels, specificity where we don't name the places. Like we're just moving through the quarter. And I read books like that set in Louisiana. I'm like, I got to do a little bit of like, I call it like the Harry Potter world building, where like we give places names of like the
Yes.
House of Flowers and I think the fun part for me was I have a responsibility to make it seem like the real New Orleans. This is also an old history and a fantasy. So I have to basically heighten those magical elements. And so again, the House of Flowers has a huge like wisteria tree inside of it. And like getting to do fun and haunting atmospheric things like that And then of course like the building changes names from like French to English, and I'm like, yeah, if New Orleans was magical, we probably would see something like that. So it was a weird trying to live in the twilight between what's real and a little bit of my own invention to give it my own kind of spin. So it was really fun.
Yeah, I love that, and I love how you talk about it as like set pieces,
Mm-hmm.
like almost like because this book has a very cinematic feel too, and it's almost
Mm.
like different settings, and you're right, there are some books that are kind of dry with like descriptions of
Mm-hmm.
settings and things, and they can they can add so much to the
Mm-hmm.
story
Mm-hmm.
and to the getting to know the characters and the
Mm-hmm.
narrative. So
Thank you.
um, yeah, so I want to talk about Marie and Ree, her daughter,
Mm-hmm.
Marie too. And so how did you develop them as characters and their relationship to each other? Because they're very different in many ways, but also have some
Mm-hmm.
underlying similarities. And so I mean, I think you said I read somewhere you read this is at heart it's a mother-daughter story, right?
It is.
It's historical fantasy, but that is really like the root of it.
It is. It is. It is. And no spoilers, but it kind of grows into like a family story as well, as we get towards the end. But so with Marie and Ree, I think, Marie Laveau is the anchor, right? She's our famous character. And in many ways, Ree is Marie Laveau, which is confusingly. And it's like, for me, we don't know who Ree is without knowing who Marie Laveau is. And I know it works backwards because when we meet in the present, Marie is the one that's veiled and it's all powerful and mysterious. And I wanted to feel like we were Ree in a way. Like this is her mother, but she still has so many questions and trying to figure her out. And I
Hmm.
think when we get to the dual timeline structure, we are Marie now, and she is younger. We see she's more like Ree. She's fiery. She has these ideals about how to make New Orleans better. And no spoilers, but we see how basically she becomes like she's in the present, maybe all powerful, but that power will cost you. And I think that's probably one of the themes of Quarter Queen is that power has a cost. And
Hmm.
anyone who seeks power probably is not fit for it. And so a lot of these characters are called to their positions and spiritually, politically. So, in approaching it that way, we're kind of Ree fish out of water, but also like native to New Orleans. And with Ree, I think she has a lot of resentment because she sees her mother as, for better or for worse, as the voodoo queen. Doesn't have much
Hmm.
time for her, and if she does have time for her, it's always a lesson. She's a queen person, a teacher, in many ways, like John, and as we'll come to see, but not so much maternal warmth. And I think what Ree comes to understand is that there's way more to it. There are secrets. Maybe Marie should have said more than she did. She was scared. And I think wanting to protect your child, not just from slavery, but from the Brotherhood of the White Hand, you have the church, you have all these things that are in New Orleans actively every single day.
Hmm.
Ree, in order to keep basically kind of her secrets, she has this kind of heart of stone. And we
Hmm.
get to kind of unpack that and realize she's just a woman. And
Hmm.
many women have secrets and everything else as they, grow up. And so getting to like humanize Marie actively through the pages was a lot of fun. But Ree, I think, is she's a brat with a heart of gold. That's how I like to describe her.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so when I knew who Marie was, we just can't have two of the same characters because that's boring. And they're both called Marie Laveau. I was like, oh no. So I was
Right,
like,
right,
so
right.
we're gonna call her Ree because I, have a friend whose name is Marie and call her Ree. And I was like, that's perfect.
Hmm.
Um, and I just felt like it even has a kind of fun, and Ree is fun, and she's just a party girl that is thrust into a political game, and she does have a heart of gold underneath it all. She's a brat, yes, definitely.
Hmm.
But yeah, so she's the sinner, and Marie is the saint.
Yeah, love that. So this your answer also like
Mm.
segues into like so I have writing questions now.
Yes.
Um, this is a dual timeline story told from alternating perspectives. I'm always
Hmm.
interested in narrative structure. Did you
Okay.
always intend to write it that way? Was that the plan from the start?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
And
I mean, so go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
That's a fun question because I wish my editor was here because when this book was acquired, I'm spelling all the T now. It was Marie, Ree, Marie, Ree, Marie, Ree, the whole way through. And even as I finished, I knew, okay, this is, good enough to sell. But it's like, I myself was like, who is the main character here? And again, I wanted to do things a little bit differently in Porter Queen because again, I wanted to kind of break some stereotypes that
Hmm.
we see well enough, but we don't often see a woman in her 40s who's a mother, like especially in fantasy, who is the main character instead of like, often the mother is dead and she's the
Hmm.
princess inherited a legacy. It's like, no, mom and and everybody else is hot. Everyone's hot running around here. So we, Natalie, my editor, who's fantastic, was like, yeah, we need to scale her chakras back a bit, center Ree, because she is a more modern voice here, which it always had that maturation story of Ree was going to grow into a full grown woman. And so, in order to bring that forward, we did a lot of moving stuff around. And finally, it was like, okay, Marie gets the prologue because we got to know who the quarter queen is. She gets that great line at the end, that kind of zinger. And then Ree, and then citing incident with the coma, which is, it really works out. Then it's like back to the past. It's like, oh, okay. Like it feels like a proper kind of part two for a book.
Yeah, it's really well structured, and
Thank
it's
you.
so funny you mentioned inciting incident. Yeah, I think a lot about like plot and structure,
Hmm.
planning out stories, and it just, yeah, it's so interesting to see
Thank you.
people's approach and how it's done.
That's
Um,
the fun part.
it is
I
the
love
fun
I
part.
love
Yeah,
plotting and it's frustrating. It's probably the
yeah,
most frustrating part. It's the most rewarding though.
that's
When it
right.
works, you're like, it works. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's like I was describing it to someone as like building a puzzle and then trying to have to solve it.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So this started, this is your debut novel, but you've,
Hmm.
done all sorts of writing. This started as a TV pilot. So when you decided or ended up turning it into long form fiction,
Hmm.
what was your process? We just talked about, like, obviously it sounds like you plot things out.
I
What's your
do.
writing process like?
I'm a plotter. So I think the fun thing for me is I'm a visual learner. And scenes kind of like occur to me like visually. A lot of writers talk about this, like where it's like kind of like a head movie. It's like I see it.
Hmm.
I think the trouble is it comes to having to make that make sense. And so I
Yeah.
think it's the very well-oiled screenwriter routine of like, you've all heard about this, like the note cards and then the scenes, and then you just kind of put them in the order they need to go. A lot of that lent itself to Quarter Queen, which thank you, like cinematics, like that's such a huge compliment. Because I think a lot of that helped with making, it's a complex novel in many ways. And so having to elucidate that for readers and or
Hmm.
even myself, for my editor, for the team at Ballantyne, like, okay, lots of great feedback went into this. But I write out an outline and then knowing that that's probably just the Bible and that things will shift. Characters will do things and you're like, okay, that's good. I'm
Hmm.
listening. A good author will listen. And then that will change plot things. And so then we have to go and adjust that. So just understanding an overarching goal, this was dual timeline. Once we satisfied, like moved Marie's chapters around and then really centered, New Orleans as a character and really read because I would say the weird thing is that we had to have just enough time to make you care about, but also have questions about Marie, but also show like the mother-daughter relationship because when she's in the coma, she's not actively there with Ree, but it feels like it kind of like she's this ghost kind of haunting her actively. So yeah, I think an outline, and then I also do a playlist for music, very music focused. And then I will literally sometimes make a mood board and just kind of mood board scenes out, almost like a director, like a shot list. And that really helps me sometimes when you get stumped and writer's block, because as well as I, better than me, you got to write on deadline. Like they don't care about the writer's block.
We do
A
not.
book is,
No.
the baby is due.
That's
Okay.
right. That's right. So I have a question, this question, but I want to read this from your author's note
Okay.
first. The events of this book are an alternate history that exists within a heightened second reality, just askew of the real 19th century New Orleans. Represented in a fantastical context, this is a world that is both horrifically like the one we know and the one we do not. And I've had a lot of historical fiction authors, just
Hmm.
historical fiction. I think Sarah Penner is
Love her.
one of the only historical fantasy authors I've had on. So I'm modifying my question.
Okay.
When writing, how did you balance like creating this world which is based on history but has elements of fantasy as well? And did
Hmm.
you find all of that challenging? Was it freeing? Was it just
Mm.
a balancing act?
Freeing is the word. Like,
Yeah.
no pun intended. It's like very much a very much a freeing thing because it's a historical, and even tackling Marie Laveau, it just makes it a historical automatically. So you
Mhm.
just have to know how to do 19th century New Orleans, and hopefully it's done well.
Oh yeah.
But when you do a fantasy, there are conventions fantasy readers are expecting, like a magic system, and really kind of having to make voodoo very clear in here. But I felt like being a fantasy allowed me license to just heighten things that people are already expecting from New Orleans. So again, we talked about demons and spirits. Okay, So if you think you don't know, demons are definitely real in Quarter Queen. We see one right away in the prologue, right? Possession is real. Um, the Loa are real. Alchemy is real. But again, those things function as a metaphor because guess what else is real that is in this world? Racism, right?
Mhm.
Misogyny, so many other things. We don't have to get into the horrors of eugenics
Mhm.
that the Brotherhood kind of represents, like the idea of like night doctors and eugenics and the Klan, but also the Freemasons. And I was like, what if we could kind of twist all that up and put them into this kind of horrific fraternal? Because again, white fraternal orders have always existed. And I'm like, okay, so
Mhm.
Quarter Queen, because again, the Freemasons actually, and I'm not picking on them because again, I'm not saying the Brotherhood is the Freemasons. They existed in New Orleans, right alongside the church, right with the Voodoo. Like this is perfect factional. Because again, I understood the fantasy convention is the factional kind of warfare here.
Mhm.
That should function as a great metaphor for real life politics. And again, we
Absolutely.
talked about this earlier of like, I have the opinion like one should not seek power. It's kind of like the Game of Thrones, like, you know nothing, Jon Snow. It's like, well, if you seek power, you probably already corrupted. But the man who doesn't seek power, woman in this case, will struggle, but will probably learn to do the right thing because they didn't want it in the first place. But yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, fascinating.
Mhm.
Um, I um, I have to ask a movie related question because
Yeah.
my family, I have two daughters, my husband, we're all like huge movie people, and one of our favorite movies this year or the past few years is Sinners. And
Yes. Come on.
yeah,
Come
and
on.
you use that as a comp, and I was like,
Yes.
oh yeah, like
Yes.
I
Yes.
totally saw that. I mean, I could
Yes.
perfect comp. It was. I'm so glad Michael B. Jordan won the Oscar. That
Me
was so
too.
fun.
That's my guy.
I was
That's
like
my guy.
so pumped for him. So,
Yeah.
is there any movie or television interest yet,
Mm,
or can you not say?
we can't say a whole lot. I'll put it this way, we're out the showrunners. And so yeah. It's funny because I had a couple of name producers approach me before I was repped. And again, maybe you can talk all about that. Like you never want to get into that without having a rep and it can
No. Yeah.
you'll live to regret it. But
Yep.
big time. Trust me, like all good deals are not good deals. But that being said, a little bit. And so we're trying to navigate the TV stuff, but it's weird because this already existed before Sinners came out, and then when that my editor was like, perfect comp. She was like, I just saw Sinners,
Perfect
and I was like,
comp.
perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. Like no sinners, no saints. But
Yeah.
listen, just that in itself showing that I'm so happy a genre movie won, but just showing that genre can be used and say genre like as in like fantasy or horror is
Yes.
a
Yes.
great way to get into the metaphor. Because sometimes if we just give people so it's like with the medicine, the candy with the medicine, we just give it to
Oh.
you straight sometimes and no chaser. It can seem heavy or
Mhm.
even overly wrought. But having some kind of fantastical element to hang your hat on, I think allows readers to I don't know, to digest it. And I hate to say the word palatable, but I think what it is just a slow digestion of heavy themes. So I
Yeah.
was so
Yeah.
happy about Sinners and love them. Love
Yeah.
them.
Great
Yes,
timing.
yes,
Yep. Yeah.
yes. So Mr. Kugler must come this way. Come on.
That's
No.
right. Oh yeah, he would be perfect for this.
Perfect. I know. Like, perfect.
Talking about the director and producer and writer. Did he do all
Okay.
three, I think, right? Kugel, Ryan Coogler?
Yes.
Yeah.
Proximity is his company. Him and his wife and Seb, they did Zinzi Kugler. They produced it. He directed and he wrote. And I'm like,
Amazing.
dang, the Trinity.
I know, honestly,
Yeah,
how talented.
I know, and humble.
Yes,
I
very.
know.
So, again, movie question. If you had like you did a vision board, who would play Marie and who would play Ree in your your
This
wish list?
this is also a fun question because we definitely have talked about casting and like in my mind, perfect, right? And she'll hopefully forgive me for this. Tandy Newton, and I think she pronounces it now as Tendi Way. Just pictured her. I don't know if you ever saw like
Yes.
Westworld, like Maeve. She was so, and then she also had done Beloved. It's like you can, but I think the twist here is that she's a free woman, so not retreading the same territory. But like, my agent had the great idea that like her daughter, who is also
Oh,
an
her
actress,
daughter. Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
and they look so much alike. I was like, that actually would be a great idea. So
Oh, that's a great
I
idea.
know. So just
Yeah.
throwing it out there.
Yeah, Sandy Newton's daughter was in The
Yes,
Last of Us, right? I
yes,
think.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Very lovely.
Oh, excellent. Excellent choices. Get on
I
that.
know. Thank you. I know. I'm like, Tom Publicis, get on that.
All right.
She's like, I am, girl.
Um, so how different was the process of writing a novel composed compared to the other types of writing you've done, specifically screenplays, but I know you've also done academic writing.
hmm
So how different was that for you?
Um, I think in screenplays, and it's when you write a screenplay, you have certain conventions. So whether you're frustrated by it or not, like the 90-page feature, I'm also a TV writer, so those has their own rules. But like again, if we're just picking on features, movie writing, the 90 to it really is trending smaller. You used to could go up to 120. Can't really do that nowadays. It's really 100 to 90 pages. People like the lean machine, but
Mhm.
visually driven. You cannot give interiority of a character's thoughts. Sometimes you can break those rules. So I really learned with screenwriting how to get to the heart of a character. Story beats, set pieces, very
Mhm.
technically minded. I think the problem with screenplays though is that they can read dry sometimes. Same thing, because we're just worried like you can break any rule so long as
Mhm.
you understand the rules. Same with fiction. And so I think that gave me a great framework to work from. And then again, going back to novel writing, which was my first thing, I like to be indulgent. And so I used to get picked on my screen like this is too in screenwriting, you just really use the kind of lush voice and sometimes you hope it doesn't go purple, but
Mhm.
I really love getting to do interiority and letting the characters and the settings kind of coalesce and breathe. And so, leaning in. I would say I really just enjoyed the idea of leaning in and writing a novel. Of course, it takes longer. It's probably more work. As if
Mhm.
a lot of people have gotten into like, oh, this is a lot. It is a lot, and then it becomes even more of a lot when you have to deliver on a deadline.
Yeah.
And then and it's crazy. Like when it's different process when a book is contracted, and like people are going to see this, and you're going to get notes.
Mhm.
And I would say that the thing that remains the same is that you will get notes. Notes are not going away, and I learned that on the screenwriting side. And so, understanding that novel writing is a team sport, because I think there's this
Mhm.
misconception. In Hollywood, there's this saying like, if you don't like this, go be a novelist, as if it's so easy, right? But it's like the idea that you go write in a broom closet. Now, I do write in a broom closet, but when I come out of it, there's a lot of team sporting. Like there's the editor notes, and we
Yes.
get on the call and understanding that they're there to help you with your story, but also it's your mutual baby, and that you have, even if you disagree with the note, there's usually a note behind the note. And
Mhm.
interrogating your own work is very important. And your editor is your friend, not your enemy. But yes, so just learning all of that and really I just kind of embraced the process. Like I would say one of the most rewarding parts of this was getting work with my editor, Natalie, because we would just rapid fire pitch back and forth. And that feeling when it's working, woo,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
a good
that's the
baby.
best.
It's the
Yeah.
best feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really good advice actually, because I don't, I you have in this business. I mean, at the end of the day, I always say like the book is a product, right? And you're working
Mm-hmm.
with the team to make it the
Mm-hmm.
best product that you can
Mm-hmm.
make it, so that
Mm-hmm.
it'll
Mm-hmm.
find its audience. So I think
Yes.
that's
Yes.
really good advice. What
Thank
is
you.
what other advice do you have for aspiring writers out there? I know we have a lot of aspiring writers who listen to the
We do.
podcast.
Um, so do we have enough time? No, seriously, I think what has been very important for me, and it's crazy because I didn't get repped until 30 and I started at 18 and I really wanted that and got close to the book deal at 24. It can take you 10 years. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, the first advice someone gives you, and I thought, is that your first book is probably not going to be the one that's published. And I would say, I thought, oh, yeah, I can be like, no. And by the way, thank God for that because I got enough time to develop. You know what I mean? Because
Yep.
okay, so I
Yeah.
probably shouldn't say more on that, but like, thank God. And what I mean to say is that even if it takes you 10, 12 years, the time will pass anyways. So please
Mm-hmm.
just focus on your craft. And you have to have a good sense of like, if this feels ready, understanding the writing will change again. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to accept that. If you can't
Yeah.
accept that, you probably should not be writing books. It will change. I think the caveat to that is for the better.
Mm-hmm.
So yes,
Absolutely.
relinquish control in that sense.
Yep. And have a thicker skin, I think, too,
Have a
right?
thicker
Yeah.
skin
Yeah.
because you will get notes and the notes will have notes and they're not going away. They're
No,
never
no.
going away. And then when you think they're going away, then you're gonna get feedback. Then you're gonna get good reviews. Then you're gonna get
Yeah.
it's just you're a public figure now.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Good, excellent advice. Are
Thank
you
you.
ready to talk about what you're working on next?
Yes, kind of. So I have a horror movie that I'm working on about a coven of witches, kind of like with mommy issues. Can't say more than that. Really
Okay.
hot about that. And then I have a short story. The agency they do a lot of those. That's in the can and ready to go, and a horror one. About addiction, kind of like a present day The Shining.
Oh,
Set in
excellent.
the American South. So really fun in South Carolina. And then the sequel to The Quarter Queen, hopefully soon. Natalie and I will get started on that. So yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Congratulations on
Thank
all of
you.
that.
Thank you.
How best can readers stay in touch with you?
Instagram for sure.
Instagram. Okay.
You can
Okay.
kind of find me on TikTok a little bit, but ever since like it was rebought, no, not really. So I'm just on
Yeah.
Instagram, like oh Kayla go, like literally like oh Kayla go. That's it.
Okay.
So yeah, you can find me there and DM me, tag me, whatever. Yeah, I'll get to it. Thank you, Jane. I also want to add a little note. I watched your podcast on you, and I have to say I love Goodnight from Paris, but like when you talked about the release papers and having that, I nerded out. I'm like, how did you? Again, that archival research, I'm like, that is the
Oh,
best part of writing a historical novel. So I had to nerd out a bit, shout you out.
oh, thank you. Thank you
Yes,
so much. I
yes,
appreciate that.
of course.
So yeah, I will so that's all wrapped. My husband will edit it,
Yay.
my tech guy. So I will make a note to him to get this out around the 31st, and I
Okay.
will tag you and send you graphics and all that stuff too. So
Amazing, amazing.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you for hosting me. So
yeah,
lovely. Love to connect
so fun.
again. I
Yeah.
love this. Keep me apprised of more guests and stuff. I'll be tuning in. Such a fan.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you, thank you. And I just love chatting with you, and I love supporting authors. So if there's anything else I can do for you, let me know.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Nice to meet you. Take care.